Hi there, welcome to another episode of the Attitude Makeover podcast. This is your host Saujanya Shetty, and today I'm very excited to have with me Geeta Manjunath. She is the founder of a wonderful deep tech AI company called Nirumai, which is primarily into early cancer detection for women, more specifically focused on breast cancer. So, what got me hooked on to this conversation is to really go deeper into a researcher's mindset and look at the transformation from a researcher in the corporate world to an entrepreneur who's actually solving a major problem for all the women in the world itself. How do you go through that journey? How do you take that plunge? What are some of the challenges? How do you evaluate this landscape? What kind of partnerships need to be dealt with? What kind of channels do you use? How do you balance the revenue to the cost? What kind of, company and culture do you want to set up? How do you gradually strike off assumptions and validate them in your entrepreneurial journey? How do you deal with fundraising and penetrating or expanding into other regions, also getting into B2B and B2C models? How does one go about this? So I think the whole conversation delves deeper into the mindset shift, primarily from a researcher to an entrepreneur, while also delving deeper into the understanding of breast cancer. What is the landscape like? How do you make it easy and simple for early detection? And what are some of the regulatory challenges that one faces in the healthcare space as you launch a new solution and a product as an entrepreneur? This and more is what we talk about in this beautiful conversation with Geeta Manjunath. This and more is what we cover in today's conversation with Geeta Manjunath, the founder of Nirumai. I hope, as always, you like this, and if you do, I hope you would be kind enough to share, subscribe, and like on the podcast channels or in YouTube. I'll see you again next week. Geeta, a very good morning, and thank you so much for being here on a festival day. I'm not taking this for granted, so thank you so much. It's an honor and privilege to have you here.
Oh, thank you, Saujanya. It's a privilege to be on your show as well.
So I think I've known you for what, like now 17 years in the past, and you come from a research background. You're a solid researcher. I still remember we came with this brilliant idea in HP of, we had that in entrepreneurship competition, and you asked, so who will buy this? Who's the audience? Because we were so in awe of what we were coming with, and you had this clarity of technology, business, impact, and the questions were very all-rounded. And that changed the way I looked at innovation itself. So for me, I think that's how I go back then with Ajay and you and all of them. So I want to start off with really getting to know a researcher's mindset. So Geeta, you did your IISc, PhD, and then you worked in research labs both in HP and Xerox, then became an entrepreneur. So a researcher mindset transitioning to an entrepreneur has its other challenges as well, because the research mind is more into going deeper and deeper, whereas an entrepreneur is about how fast you can run as well. So you've managed to bring innovation with agility and the leanness together. And I think it's a beautiful marriage of research and entrepreneurship that came together. So my first thing when we start is to really get to understand who is Geeta, what's your journey been, and especially go deeper into the researcher mindset.
Sure. I think my inquisitiveness, which is early aspects of research, started off, even in my childhood, I would think, right? I recall I used to chat with my father, and if something breaks down, he was like my hero, right? Like all daughters. And then he, if let's say even the tap, is leaking or something, he never used to call plumber. He wants to sort of fix it himself, like the engineer in the mind, right? And anything like that. So so with that, he used to open up these things. I was very inquisitive about how does this work, how does the water flow, how does it stop. It's as simple as that, to how does a radio work and TV work and that kind of thing. So from the beginning I've been in this, and then my parents have been very supportive of trying to answer the question. Otherwise, clearly say, okay, you go figure out. At that time, of course, we didn't have the web to Google for everything, right? So that's where it started. And then I think my real research mindset started in Indian Institute of Science after my bachelor's, where I happened to top the state in for all branches of engineering. I got admitted to IISc, my favorite place, because I did my small project there, and I was so influenced and inspired by the researchers, the professors there. Even in my BE, sort of, they made us build a supercomputer board, and I didn't know anything, and we had to figure out. So it's like if I take the analogy of like a walking and a mountaineering, right? So research is like mountaineering equivalent of thinking, right? So every time you really hit a roadblock, and you just have to cut the weeds and figure out what is the nicer path to go up, which takes you higher up than, like, side. You can imagine this. So and there could be, like, multiple pathways. You go a little bit. No, of course, there's a huge boulder you can't climb, so you come back and go. So it's very similar to that thinking mindset, right? So in IISc, it's pure research environment. Every project you do is something nobody else has done before. So you can't Google and find the answers. You have to find it on your own. Textbooks, what's called open book tests, right? So you can take it home, and then, like, no textbook, you have to think. So the ability to think, the confidence that I can think and solve tough problems definitely came from Indian Institute of Science. I used to have one of the toughest supervisors for my master's also, Y.N. Shrikant sir. So, he's known to be the terror in research and so on and so forth. So all that happened. And so that is where it started. And so when I graduated from master's, I realized that I really enjoyed doing something that nobody else has done before. That's the fun. Just the sheer nature of solving it, right? And so I was very clear that I would like to go into, of course, we had many campus interviews and all, but basically my dream job was computer science research. At that time, CDAC was the only research institute in India. I am also a nationalist. Say, Mera Bharat Mahan, and I want to prove to others that India can do types. So, I just decided to stay back in India, and I had my first 5 to 6 years at CDAC, being part of the team which built the first supercomputer, commercial supercomputer from India. It was very, very challenging and very interesting to learn new things and then solve and make it work. So I've always been that researcher mindset who wants to see something working on the ground. Of course, I've published a bit, but I'm not so fond of just sort of writing papers and getting that 0.01% improvement. I like solving things. I don't mind publishing because I want to tell others this is working, but not really about just having my list of papers happen. So very different type. So I went on to do the supercomputer research, making it work and building that system, and more like systems research, one would call. And then after about 6.5 years, Hewlett Packard was opening their research group here, and looks like that was Chandra Venkatraman and Subbu who were there. They wanted to make India grow up the value chain, because at that time only defect fixing and so on was the main project work that was coming in. And so they proposed, and then incidentally they came to IISc and said, whom should we hire? And for some reason my professor said, go get Geeta. So I said, oh, they came to me. Chandra called me, and it was a very, very nice start. I was given this sort of small team to do research and prove to the HP Labs Palo Alto that India can also do some good stuff. So we started off there, and it was first time exposure to international researchers at that time. I really enjoyed, the first 10 years was really every year we used to go present our new ideas, new things that we have done to a large audience in California. get their feedback and get their aha, feedback, which is more further motivating. We used to come back. So that was, and also that was the time, you may remember, we used to have a lot of these tech cons going on, and I used to tout, I'm the only person from, very few of them, less than 5 of us had actually attended every TechCon, because to get into TechCon you had to have a research idea which could turn into business, and you should have a protocol, a prototype which works. So it was very, very interesting. So anyway, 10 years of that, and after that I moved on to do something for India focused research, because HP Labs, because as a part of HP Labs Palo Alto first, it was more like doing things for the US and global market, where I don't think I appreciated all the nitty-gritties of how the customers would use it and so on. So that was a time when we were thinking, like, can we build something like a new business proposal? And so I moved on to HP Labs India, where we started proposing this. And the first question was like, exactly as you said, yes, we have built it. How does it work? What is the innovation? And how does it help somebody, right? And how does it make the life of the user simpler? And who is going to take this to market? These are the questions, of course, in between, I think it was in Xerox, I did my mini MBA as well from Kellogg Chicago. That made my clarity very, mind, clear about what kind of questions to be asking. Of course, you never know the answers, but you need, having the right type of questions. I think at the end of the day, what happens is, when we actually did a couple of projects, pilots where real end users started using it, and you talk to the end users, then you realize, oh my God, I was thinking this is what I should be doing, but the customers or the actual end users, change your thought process completely. Yes. When I saw that happening, I said, okay, so it really requires this, working with the customer to finally refine. So it's been mostly learning on the job, trying to ask the right questions. And I think TechCon made a huge difference also, writing it up and then trying to prove that there is business value. What is the unsolved problem from a business standpoint, unsolved problem from an end user experience standpoint, and how do I fit this idea into it? Many times it used to be hammer and trying to look for a nail, especially when you come from HP Labs and trying to look for business connects. But through that, it was a good learning. So I've always been this person who needs to see something work on the ground differently, right? The last turning point, I hope it is the last turning point, was the entrepreneurship. So after HP, I joined Xerox Research. Meanwhile, I did my PhD also in IAC. And the PhD also is very different. Again, trying to make a system work where anyone can create mobile apps without programming and so on and so forth. So
like
end user oriented.
code.
No code,
Okay.
programming by browsing for the web, and so things like that. You could create widgets for all mobile devices. You could have an SMS interface and all of that. So there was a lot of very deep stuff which had to be solved because web pages were changing every time. Just record and replay wouldn't work. So that's where I did my the core theory that's required for a PhD from my ASC. Otherwise, they don't let me go with the degree. So it was a very interesting mix of science and engineering and real usage that we did. So anyway, so when I joined Xerox, I joined as head of their analytics research, AI research lab. It was a techno-managerial role where my main role was to, of course, understand the research ideas that my team was proposing and then guiding them to make it more business savvy, connecting the dots, talking to the business guys, trying to feel. And then many times, researchers are not able to express their idea in a way that others can understand. I used to spend hours together, first of all, understanding their stuff, and then trying to say, first, don't do this way, mentoring them from a value standpoint, understand and explaining to them what is the value, where you have to focus on the research on, and then connecting that value to any of the existing business problems. So that was something very interesting. During that time is when I was working with a lot of customers, be it in healthcare, that is hospitals, customer care like the call center managers, education like principals of the education schools and colleges, and and also smart cities, going and meeting the GM of the mayor and so on and so forth, right? So those kinds of things. Incidentally, one of my cousin sisters got detected with breast cancer, and she was very close to me. She's just about a year elder to me, and within a year, I lost her. So that was extremely shocking because I'd never seen breast cancer so close to me. And while I was mulling over this and discussing with my friends and like, why is this happening? Why did she detect late and so on? I realized that, there is an opportunity to do some research because with so many ladies dying unnecessarily, literally unnecessarily, untimely because of late detection. So I went back to the same research. We used to propose newer projects, and I proposed this. Why don't we start a project? I discussed with one of my colleagues in Palo Alto as well, Dr. Leke Mesta, who was an imaging specialist, and he had initially tried a few images of thermal camera, and he said, I don't know whether something can be done with AI here. And so we sat together, stared at a few images, said, yeah, I think we should be able to develop something. It just started as I just want to work in this area because there's so much curiosity and it needs some solution. But I didn't know where I was going. We did a small study on 70 people, and we were able to identify where the cancer was, 70 cancer patients. We were able to identify. Then I thought, okay, there's something in here we are able to develop. And but I thought, why do we have to go and screen people or image people who are already known to be cancer patients? So why don't we do it on a screening mode? So I tried to look for people, some doctors who are using it. There was nobody, only one doctor I found who was using it along with ultrasound to have better accuracy, and he was against any X-ray based screening, and that's why he was using this. So that started learning about it. But basically during this process I realized I have to be on the ground much more, and I had 25-30 projects I had to manage. At Serendipity would have it, Xerox also was going through some transformation. It became two companies and so on. And that was a chance to actually sort of move between projects, and I was able to take up I was given a much bigger role. Then I thought through and said, no, I want to spend the rest of my life on this problem because it's such a huge problem. So it's really passion to solve that problem which made me an entrepreneur. I didn't know what entrepreneurship was literally, but after I sort of jumped off, of course it's very similar to the intrapreneurship we are all doing in HP, except for the funding. And another thing is much more freedom. I always think about entrepreneurship as you're sitting on a driver's seat, and of course with co-drivers and co-pilots in some cases where the road is empty. You can just go at whatever speed you want to, right? You want to, and you can. Of course there will be bumps, you have to be careful and make sure, but you really can move very, very fast, right? So that I realized. And also because we were proposing a new kind of an idea, we got selected into multiple accelerator programs, got mentored outside. So all this has been a huge learning experience. And in the career, I won't say how many years, obviously 25 plus, you can put any number of pluses there. I think this has been one of the most very, very interesting projects that we are love to talk more about it.
I think one thing that stood out as a researcher is, and I can relate with that, is dealing with ambiguity. To your point about trekking in a mountain versus walking, or even driving as an entrepreneur, it's that whole thrill of dealing with ambiguity. Tell me what it means to you, dealing with ambiguity.
Yeah, it's just comfort in dealing with ambiguities, right? Right, basically. So dealing with ambiguity is more about comfort with ambiguity, and not being alarmed and tensed when you see something you don't know, right? And having the confidence that we will get through it, right? So I think one is I'm a little bit with a spiritual bent of mine. So saying whatever happens is for good, and learn something every day, and there's something that's going to happen good at the end of the tunnel. So this is the optimistic, every entrepreneur is optimistic, but this is, I think, one of the main aspects. So you don't get tensed about something, you have to deal which is unknown, which is sudden, which is unplanned. I really love unplanned journeys and things like that. Again, this trekking example, right? The mountaineering example. So one aspect is the confidence that you will get through. Second is the confidence doesn't come just like that, right?
Yeah.
So it's like you think through the problem and say, okay, is there one naivest, dumbest way of solving that problem, right? And then I take on that problem. Such a dumb problem in the dumbest way that you wouldn't go in that path. But worst case, is there a way of crossing that, right? So that is usually the baseline to see whether I'm going to take up that challenge or not, right? And what is the bailout situation? So if it doesn't work, how do we sort of retract and then take another? Is there such a bailout situation or not? Bailout pathway and situation also. And of course, the third one is assessing the risk, right? By doing this, are you harming somebody? Are you, what is the level of risk you're taking, to yourself and somebody else also? I think these three things, right, will give you confidence, yes, we can go. And once you have a sort of a baseline, dumbest way of doing things, always it's about how do I improve over it. So there you like sort of look at the dumbest solution and say which is likely to be more requiring optimal solution, right? Something that can be more efficient. So you can look at this like piecemeal fashion. So look at the whole task, break it into micro tasks. Among all of these, look at the hardest micro task, right? And if we are able to just focus your next leg of research on the hardest micro task, then it'll be much simpler and it's much faster to reach the end solution. Something that there are better ways of doing this and so on. So you could always postpone it because you won't. There's no point in solving all of that and you have not yet solved the core problem, right? So these are some of the sort of the basics, things that we have done as researchers quite a bit. And so same with entrepreneurship also, right? Every day it is like research, not just in tech, research in business modeling, research in funding. How do you positioning, all of that, how do you find the gap? How do you explain the gap? All of this is sort of, in different type of, research thinking. So I think it's just being comfortable. Not everybody is, some people are very good planners and executors on it, right? I'm actually a very bad planning person, right? So I always get sort of, we fight with my husband is a proper planner. So, it's good.
Compliment.
Yeah, we irritate each other and, compliment each other and move on. So in the same way, there are some people who are like process oriented, plan and do. So I think for an entrepreneur or for a startup, right, you require all of these mix of people that I was thinking. So of course, in the first group, right, maybe 5 to 10 people, I think you'll really need those hustlers and sort of go-getters. You can call it go-getters because you want to get there, figure out the shortest and the best, hopefully best, but shortest way of getting there. So all of these people, and when you start scaling, you'll need more patient people who can plan because that is where the scale comes in, right? You want to make sure it's a repeatable process.
Consistent.
It's not like once you got it working and that's about it. So you need a mix of all of these people. For a startup, you need somebody who can roll up the sleeves, run fast as we can. And also we'll need some kind of master of all types, because you have to do all kinds of jobs and all kinds of activities. And of course, there will always be what we used to call as a T thing, right? You will know a little bit of everything, and there is one thing you're very proficient with. I think it's good for every career. Same with entrepreneurship also. If you have multiple co-founders, particularly individually, you can take a look at one aspect fully. Otherwise you always end up being a jack of all, multiple things.
Yeah.
And if you're a single founder like me right now, you can also get very passionate leaders who want to contribute to the society. Build a nice strong leadership team with each of them having a skill that is possibly better than you, but you are able to sort of understand what they're saying and connect up all the dots to make the company work.
In this process, it's also important to start striking off assumptions, especially when you're starting with the hard ones and then going. it's also about, this assumption. So being ambiguity is also having clarity on what assumptions I'm going with and validating those or striking them off as quickly as possible. Because if you keep that assumption, I remember one of my mentors saying, assumption is the mother of all.
Especially when you're trying to find a solution to this
Correct.
problem,
Correct.
you have to make sure that there is, you are conscious where you are guessing
Correct.
and where you know what you're doing. Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
There's that chart, you know that you know.
That's
You know
all
that
you
you don't know.
Yeah.
You don't know that you don't know, and you
Yeah.
don't know that you know, right? I think you have to be more about
Yeah.
knowing and accepting what you don't know
Yeah.
and putting the assumptions forward, especially when and that helps us making things better, obviously, yes.
I think for me, that stint in the corporate world really helped because that's where I learned. I enjoy the ambiguity space, but important part is to list down your assumptions, to validate those, put that under test quickly. Also, to bring in the marriage of technology, business, and the customer. Like, you can have business, I will make money this way, and this is the technology, but if there is no base for it, what's your target audience? I'm slowly starting the conversation of the origin of Neramai itself in that case. It's a high-tech space. It's not into your operational AI, it's more into clinical systems AI, which is sort of untouched in a lot of ways. It's highly regulated in the healthcare space. So you're venturing into the most complex scenarios right there with complex technology, unsolved space, impact is huge, target audience is across. How did you start?
So first and foremost, I didn't think of all of these questions first. It was very, very important. I just jumped off with one main thing. I want to save lives. There are too many people dying unnecessarily. I want to save. And also,
Before you go there, can you give a landscape of how many people? I remember when we connected, you mentioned.
I will tell you the
Yeah.
statistics, right?
Yeah.
So when I was at the previous organization and working on this small exploratory project, one thing that I knew I wanted to do was solve that problem, right? The good thing is that I didn't think about all the questions that you asked me. If I had, maybe I would never have started, right? Because I just dived into it without knowing literally what I'm getting into, thankfully. But with one mind that really I want to try and contribute to saving lives from breast cancer. So the thing was really, I was also thinking about I'd just seen that we had a new solution, because as a researcher, again, I have seen what is a good solution, what is not a good solution. And here I did see something that really had to be taken forward, right? Where we had developed this potentially new imaging solution with AI coming together, where we could non-invasively start detecting cancer. I didn't know whether early cancer was possible, honestly, because we had only looked at a few, like 70 late stage before surgery cancers. But there was a non-invasive way. I also had this thought in my mind that at that time, because the company was splitting into two companies, the project was going to close. So I had this thought in my mind that if I don't do it, nobody else in this world will do it. So I felt like magnanimous, like I have to do it, because I also had this thought, and I discussed with one of my colleagues, Shireen. I remember she was the head of HR there. Now she's head of HR at Xerox, at Neramai. And I told her that, so one thought, right? Imagine myself, I was imagining myself to be on the deathbed and saying, would I regret any decision in my life? And I told her, if I now choose to get the promotion and be the head of the research center and drop this project, I'll regret that decision. That was very clear in my mind, that choosing a promotion or increased salary versus an opportunity to save lives would make me miserable in my life. So that was sufficient enough to say, I am jumping off. I don't know where I'm going. I'm just going to jump off. So that's what I did. Thankfully, I also discussed with two of my tech team members, Himanshu and Shiva. I asked, like, I'm planning to start this. Are you coming? And they were also, the company was splitting, and so they were anyway going to another project. And they said, okay, if you are starting, we'll come, right? I told, okay, give me 3 months. I'll try to find funds. Till then, you have to go with no salary. After that, we'll figure out. I'll let you. I'll help you get the job also in case needed, or connect you with people. So that was one thing. And then Nidhi was a program manager in my team. I think you know her as well. She of course is an excellent, business-minded person as well, finance savvy and all. So I was explaining to her, see, Nidhi, I'm going to do this, and so would you, give me your feedback? And so she gave feedback on this, and then she went back and started sharing with me some statistics and so on. So I thought, okay. And then first we said, okay, would you be willing to be come in and be the marketing head? And she said, yeah, I will be willing. So we started doing that. And after some discussions, I saw passion emerging in her also, because she had also seen cancer in her family. So I proposed to her, like, would you be my partner? She said yes. So we actually, became co-founders at that time. It's a different story that she decided to leave, within 2 years. That's okay. So, but it was an initial push that we got as 4 of us jumped off. So yeah, so basically after jumping off, I was just thinking, I know how to build products. Let's build the product first. And so we started building, and then went to the doctor and said, okay, here is a new thing, and we've tested in the lab. You're tested in the lab, but how can I give it to the end user? So I said, okay, why don't you, try this out in the hospital? But it's not so easy. You can't just put things in a hospital and start trying out. Then I realized there is very, very detailed processes involved, right? So clinical study protocols are like really, really strong. So I started learning about it. We employed, we got a CRO as a mentor, and actually an agreement with them. For all this, of course, first we had to raise funds, because a thermal camera was costing 25 lakhs at that time, the one which we were working with. And even if you want to experiment, we had to buy that. So the first day when we jumped off, Jan 1st itself, we kind of started pitching to a couple of investors. The first 2 pitches were successful. We got a term sheet from both of them. And then we were very clear we wanted to go with Pi Ventures, who have aligned with our vision and mission of saving lives with AI, AI being the main thing. And that is what I knew very well. And I was confident that I'll be able to sort of, make this work, literally. As I said, right, you figure out what is the dumbest line and what is the simplest solution, and do we know how to improve it? So this was working, and I said, okay, we can definitely make it better. So that's how it started. And, every day it's been a learning thing, because, the doctors ask very deep medical questions. So I used to go sit in conferences, try to understand the medical terms, understand the breast cancer phenomena, the treatments available, the screening methods available, everything more deeply, reading a lot about it, talking to making friends with doctors who can help us, talking to them, saying, this is the mission, please help us. And, they're actually, it's like this, you have a mission and you're passionate about making good, right? And people support you. I mean, the world is actually very beautiful. That's what I realized,
No, I think
you're making me emotional.
no, I am with you, and I think I can relate with it as well. And I keep telling our team, especially when you've got a noble purpose, an impactful purpose, and the right purpose, people come together. People,
it's amazing.
And it's from different directions. People come together.
Yeah, if I start naming people who have helped me, like there are thousands of them. Some of them have said, you're doing a great job. That also is so, it just increases the energy in yourself. So, I'm sorry.
I want to, you want?
I didn't invite you to ask me this question. You're not recording this.
Here you go. One thing I experienced, and I think I want to ask you this question, Geeta, because you might have gone through this about 3 years back when you started, right?
6 years now.
6 years, right?
Yeah.
So I used to be in the corporate world.
Yeah.
And there's a certain high, right? You get a certain high. And especially the kind of work we used to do, it's a lovely high because you're in cutting edge space you're thinking global, you're figuring out new things, you're meeting new people in industries. It's beautiful. And then I decided, okay, I'm going to do this, which is a complete different, just like you, right? It's a complete different shift in thinking everything. The first 3 months, you're going through first that whole thing of, oh my God, I've quit this. You also are under the pressure of, oh my God, I need to make this kind of VC funds to sustain, because it's not just me now. I have like 5 different people joining me who followed me. And you yourself are dealing with ambiguity to figure out, and you're realizing through the journey, it's not like you're not confident about it, but through the journey you're realizing, oh, it is not that simple.
Yes.
It's pretty complex.
Yeah.
We'll figure this out, but I'm running, it's a race against time, because time becomes a currency suddenly for us. How did that?
Yeah, the first 3 months, I think, as you said, it's the most transforming ones. I recall, multiple ways, of course, at my previous organization, it's a huge, beautiful corporate. I used to be the lab director, like a good paycheck and all, right? And I used to have a driver, car, everything,
And you
moving
had
around.
enough credibility. Like,
Credibility.
you just had to walk in, and people knew Geeta before Geeta walked in, right?
Yeah, people knew Geeta from the brand I carried. That
Exactly.
was a huge revelation,
Yes.
right? I was like Geeta from XXX, right?
Yes.
Xerox, HP, and say, oh yeah, come, we are inviting you to talk, and all I had to do was talk about what the company was doing. So when I go to a hospital and say, nobody knew about Niramai,
Yes.
and then so that is when, absolutely, like you said, we have to transform ourselves to the sort of being recognized as an individual. And it's also, once that happens, it's also fun. I mean, now some people at least are able to recognize the name
Yeah.
and kind of equate it to Niramai, the company we built, and so on, which is almost, people say I'm synonymous to Niramai now,
Yeah.
and so on. So that it takes time to build the brand for yourself and the company. But initially, it's a hard shock because, some people who were like kind of very friendly suddenly become, okay. You quit your job or were you let go?
Yes.
All of that. And it's okay. I mean, you just realize, world is like this, right? And so that's one aspect. And of course, financially, start thinking where to spend the money. I'd rarely traveled in autos and things like that, those kinds of things. And yeah, so, and also I had this sort of guilt, like a small team I was not paying for the first 3 months, right, till we got the money. And then but I only say, but I'm going to book Ola for you. I don't want you to spend money for the company, but so this kind of a thing, right? That guilt of, they are sacrificing for your mission. That thing was also there. And anyway, so I think thankfully within a month we got a term sheet for $1 million. So
lovely.
yeah, it was, I'm very thankful to Pi Ventures for, placing the trust in us. It was very hard. I mean, every 2 days they used to come up with question we didn't know the answer for. Market size, what's the market size? Okay, let's go and do it, right? Those kinds of, starting from there to, who's going to pay and all of those regular questions that startup gets asked. So trying to go and figure out that, so that was interesting, go to market, so, we thought, we'll just put it up in a hospital, but why would hospital, allow you to put it up, and what does it take to go there, and all of that. Anyway, so we and in fact, he did even a code review, are you sure? It looks too good to be true. And this is something we have heard from so many investors. I would love to talk about what we are doing as a digression, if you will, right? So the thing is, today, breast cancer is the largest cancer killer in women. Right?
It's the largest.
Largest cancer killer in 159 countries. This is the top cancer incidences seen in women and in people. In the rest of the countries, the second, because the first one is cervix. So it's a huge problem to the whole world. About 680,000 women die every year because of this disease. The mortality rates vary across, based on the country. There are countries like India, China, Pakistan and others, where you have more than 50% mortality rate. That is, every alternate lady detected with breast cancer is dying. It's unfortunate that only 4% of them actually go for regular screening. 96% of them detect their cancer by hand, which is when it actually becomes a big lump and they know that something's going wrong. They go to a hospital. It's stage 3 or stage 4, which has 50% chance of survival. So this is crazy. This is one of the most easily curable of all the diseases, and we are losing so many women. So this is the problem. And if you look at what is the available solution today, one is of course hand examination, but globally also mammography being the default standard for screening is not affordable and accessible to many of these countries. And more I read about it, I figured out that women hesitate to take a mammogram as well because
it's crazy.
Yes.
I've been through one. First of all, the whole experience itself is scary. It's like I decided I'm never doing this again.
Yeah, there's so many women feel that way where you need to first disrobe in front of others. Hopefully it's a female technician and she comes in, pulls your breast, puts between 2 plates and 10 kgs of weight is applied. And I've seen many people come out crying.
Yeah.
To top it, it is using radiation. And that's something I'm unable to come to terms with. How can you use radiation to find cancer? Because every test is increasing the risk to cancer.
Yeah.
Maybe a little bit, 0.001, I'll give it to you, right? So this is what is happening. So I didn't even think that that's the right way to do it, right? So that was one thing. And then we figured out another global issue later, right? After we had the solution, was that there's this concept or cohort called dense breasts, right? These are women who have a lot of fibroglandular tissue in the breast. When you take an X-ray, that is mammogram, the whole breast appears white. Because like a hand, right? When you take an X-ray of your hand, the skeleton appears white because that is hard.
Yes.
Similarly, a dense breast, the whole breast appears white. If that is the case, finding a white spot, sometimes microcalcifications are like flashing, but many of the dense lesions get missed out. So doing a mammography regularly also, even after that, people can miss cancer.
Yeah.
This is another major thing. But it is good. See, that's the most used and it has been proven to actually save lives, at least 13% higher survival because of it. Having said that, there are these gaps which is not making many people go for it. In the whole world, only 10% of the ladies who need to be screened are being screened by these imaging devices, mammography and ultrasound. 90% of them are just detecting it by hand. And then, of course, they go for these tests. This is crazy, right? And that's why it's usually late stage detection. So as opposed to this, what Niramai has developed is that we just measure temperature variations on the chest using a thermal sensor. No radiation, just measuring temperature. Our AI algorithms analyze this to generate a report saying whether there is an abnormality, what is the probability that it is actually cancer, and marking the likely area so that a follow-up diagnostic workup can be done at that area. And we're doing it at a much higher accuracy than the current methods, including mammography. We have many tests where we see 30% higher sensitivity, right, which is like proven scientifically, clinical tests and so on. So this, to me, is very important. So there is a simple radiation-free method. To top it, it's completely privacy aware. We made it privacy aware. In fact, I was trying to do a camp for somebody. I was only taking the image, and imagine sort of meeting your friend who is sitting naked in front of you. I was not very comfortable, so I said, let's put a screen in between. So put the device here, put a screen in between, I was sitting this side. And it became a privacy aware solution where nobody sees or touches the person. I call it changing room experience. The lady goes in, she sits in front of the device. Before that, she closes the door, removes her clothes. Nobody is inside. She's alone in front of the device like this for 10 minutes and she comes out, her report will be ready. So this is a huge crowd puller from a women's standpoint. Then accuracy is something I talked about.
What kind of accuracy is it like?
So we have published papers where we have seen 100% sensitivity, not missing any cancer that has been found by mammography and ultrasound. or ultrasound, and with about 8% false positive rate. So this is more than 95% accuracy in that term. So basically, more accurate than standard methods, non-contact, non-invasive, no pain, no touch, and no radiation as well. And it is very affordable. The device itself is now 1/20th the cost of a mammography machine. So a lot more hospitals and diagnostic centers can actually provide this. And last but not the least, it's a very portable device. It's the size of a water bottle. You can either do the test inside a hospital or take it out and do the test outside in rural areas. We have started private screening at home. Anyone can come to niramai.com, register for screening, and our team will come in and do the test at their homes, right? It's the first ever time breast cancer screening is being done at home. So essentially, you have to make the test more accessible. Women will feel comfortable. We have to make it like, a normal test, like what somebody would take. Yeah, like, you don't feel, I'm taking a cancer test. No, it's a normal test that like you do a blood test, just do this. Here, nobody is pricking you as well. So we have to make it more common and more comfortable for women to avail it. Doing it in groups also is something that, people feel comfortable. So that's what we have enabled. And incidentally, this is very unique in the whole world. Made in India with 29 granted patents. So that is 29 granted patents, 20 more pending grants. So it also that national list I mentioned to you. Yeah, so made in India for the world. And when we get these appreciations around the world, winning so many awards internationally, I feel very proud as an Indian. Yeah. So that's what, when somebody hears this story, they say, hey, come on. You're like bluffing. It doesn't work. Even the doctors say, I want to try it. So any doctor who has tried it on like 5 of 10 of his patients said, I want it, right? It's just because it's never been done before, like people have this skepticism. We have to deal with it every day. So, but yeah.
So we're talking about, the other day you were telling me, right? 6 women die every second?
No.
I've got completely messed up.
Every 6 minutes, one person dies.
Every 6 minutes,
one person in India. This is in India. Yeah. I guess the global number would be something like that. Yes, but in India, it's every 6 minutes one person dies, and every 3 minutes one person is getting cancer.
So this then becomes a very easily detectable methodology for a country as ours, which is so large.
Yes.
And how many women actually test ourselves? I'll tell you, for example, for me, I started becoming a little more aware when a colleague's wife of mine was detected. And during the shutdown, December shutdown, is when they detected by fluke. It was just total fluke, they figured. And she had a relapse. I actually had a few other friends who succumbed to it as well, right? So I think we go to the hospital only when it is extreme. So what you're also loving for is, one is the proximity, the accuracy, the ease of use, and you've really, I think the field visits really helped in nailing this no touch and the privacy part of it as well. How does regulation work in all of this here, especially in India? It's not as regulated as the rest of the world, but it's still like regulated, isn't it?
It is regulated. There are two things, right? So again, you always have to come from the main intent. The main intent is to save lives, to enable screening for everyone. While doing so, obviously you don't want to harm anybody, right? And so first you make sure that the accuracy is to a level that you yourself will take it, and you will even recommend it to your mother, right? It can't be better than that, right? So we had to make sure that the accuracy is good. That was one thing.
So did you go after that first, Geeta?
Yes, we had to, first of all, figure out what is accuracy. So we had to do formal clinical studies to see how well are we doing with respect to mammography and ultrasound. It was not too bad. Of course, initially when we in our lab test only, we were only getting 70%, and I wouldn't go and sit in front of a device which is having 70%. So, but when we improvised it and did the first one, it was 85%, which was okay, decent. Now, as I said, it's more than 95% accuracy. because even mammography is missing 30% of cancers. So, much better than that, and so on and so forth, right? So that is one aspect of comfort of doing the right thing. Second is obviously you don't want police or anybody coming behind you. So you have to do the right thing. So coming from that perspective, when you say this is part of the activity of taking things to market, right? Then it becomes, otherwise, it can seem very much of a burden, like, oh, regulatory and all that. But you have to look at it like this is another one that I have to do, like a checklist and a step towards moving to global world, right? So the India regulations are now becoming more stringent, but so we do have a regulatory clearance and voluntary registration and licensing for that. And more importantly, I'm proud to mention that we are probably the only company which has both regulatory clearance from US and Europe, now Africa and some Asian countries as well. So we've gone through the grunt. It is pretty hard, huge documentation. It's not about documenting what you know, because you realize while documenting that you don't know. You need to figure out, exactly what are the different risks that people may face, what are the things that may go wrong. You think so deeply. So you feed this back into your tech and try to sort of make the product better, and also think about the safety nets you need to create right around because at the end of the day, you don't want to put the lady or the end user at risk, right? So that mentality when you have, right, the quality and regulatory process also becomes as a good enabler for you to reach that thing, right? So that way, I think it becomes a framework also where you can start thinking in a scalable fashion and so on. But it has been a huge learning, especially US FDA thinking has started almost 2.5 years ago, and we got the clearance in March 2022 recently. So because there are several processes, and this is, like I mentioned, the first of its kind. If there exists another device similar one, then you could always prove a substantial equivalence to that device and you can take it to market. When you're building a completely new device, it's much harder. We have even tweaked the product in a way that it becomes more regulatory compliant and also safer to the person, right? So those kinds of, what are the kind of claims you will make? So you have to be very careful about the words you use in the document and when you speak. So many things we learn on the go, and so that was very hard. The clinical studies also were not very easy. It took 2 years for us to publish a 256 member study. Such a small sample.
Is it onboarding the doctors that was tough, or where was
No, it's just the sheer process of doing the evaluation itself. The first is the documentation. You have to go through a scientific review. For those of them who want to do this, there's a scientific review board to show that doing this experiment is also useful and has, again, some scientific value because it's clinical research. Next is ethics committee, where you'll have 15 people from different walks of life and disciplines, experts, who will come and see, while doing this, are you harming anybody? Is it going to help somebody? And how much harm are you creating on the patient, if at all, and so on. And then, of course, loads of documentation. And also forms, what kind of data you will create, why do you need to collect what kind of data, whatever, all of those things. And ensuring that the patient is given full information before she gives a written consent. So for every person we use the word recruited, participant recruited for this, we had to do our test and then followed by mammography, ultrasound and biopsy. Sometimes, people do mammography when they know they're cancer, they don't ever come back.
You have to do this and then followed by
all the tests. So it's like, a doctor looks at mammography, ultrasound and biopsy report and says yes or no. And this poor thing, Thermalytics, has to say yes or no without anybody's support, just a machine. So I always say, it's like a wrestling where 3 sumos coming in with a small child, because it's a very 1-year-old child, right? And so that is the kind of, scientific protocol we put together. We can do several ways. What I thought was, if you, as a scientist again, if I were on the other side, when would I believe it? That's the question you have to ask, and then say, if I had done this way and I make sure that Thermalytics performs as well as these 3 put together and the radiologist, there is a chance that people will believe that this is useful.
That's
of
why
course,
this is the toughest part.
Part of it, right? One is also trying to make sure that the lady goes through all the 4 tests, and many times a person's detected with cancer, they don't come back, they just go away, right? Obviously, it's one of the hardest news that they've ever heard in their life, right? So, so we need to sort of make sure that they come in and do the full thing and so on and so forth. So that was another big part. And every country has its own regulation. And then finding distributors who can talk to the doctors. The doctors will have tons of questions, and you can't have every person, trained to answer all the questions. They will have very, very deep questions. They'll say, okay, does it catch fibroadenoma? People will build, like, think about sales people who are going and talking. So, first few sales had to be done just by us, or literally, me talking to every hospital, and then make them the key opinion leaders and so on. So there's a different way of doing business development and sales in this one. And again, it's not really only about money. So that's why you have to balance between. You can't just do everything free also, because you have the team to we have to cover the cost. We have a team to feed and so on. It's a nice experience.
I have a couple of more deeper questions here. I think the first one I want to ponder through is, you started off with the concept that was used in imaging or image processing. Did you buy those patents, or did you start from there and then to end with 29 patents? Patent process itself is like, I've gone through them, and it's a delight to have patents. It's a pleasure to have patents, but that process is not simple and easy. It's, to your point earlier, it's about having an idea, writing the white paper, proof of concept, building the wireframes or a prototype. What is your customer base? What's your cost, your revenue? Is there a business model? It's a pretty complex thing. To go through that while you're going through this journey, it's not easy.
Yeah, it is not. But again, thanks to my HP and Xerox career, as a researcher in a multinational company, you're made to weave in, you're made to think innovatively and weave in all of these sort of deliverables, tangible deliverables, right? So when when we are ideating, or a team member comes in and says, "This is an idea. What do I do, Geeta?" Thanks to, again, HP, I used to be a patent coordinator. I don't know whether we had a full lab. I was a lab architect.
That's why you sent me back. I don't know if you remember.
I don't know.
You said the idea is all you have. What's the business? Who's the customer? And we were like, okay, we need to go back again.
And also, what exactly is the innovation, right?
Yes.
That has to be very, very clear. So I have done that for hundreds of such ideas before, for like as a mentor. And also, of course, I myself have filed more than 40, 50, I lost track, patents, right?
50?
I think so. I don't know. But of course, granted, because many things get dropped in between, that's a company's thing. So anyway, so with that in mind, so even within Niramai, from the beginning, we have made patenting as a part of the development process. Literally, there's nothing different.
Nice.
So it's so much interwoven, right? Anybody comes in and they said, okay, so this is good. You need to file a patent on this. That's part of the tasks that they have to do. Right?
That's also because you're in the high-tech space as
High-tech
well,
space,
right?
and it's definitely value for the company.
Yes.
And that's when it's considered as a deep tech and so on. And filing, we file in India and US, and then we look at, I thought about what are the geographies where this will be helpful. So identify a few of them, core ones, and then file. Because filing takes money.
Yeah.
You need money for that, right? And then slowly, I, mentored one of the team members, Dr. Shiva now takes care of it. To do the initial sort of writing of the claims. And of course, we work with a wonderful attorney team, Meta Yage. Thanks Arjun, and who came in first to help us in doing this transfer of IP from the previous organization that you asked. But after that, we've explained to them what it works. Initially, there was a little bit of a ruggedness, but now, they understand our product as much, and so easily drafting claims and so on and so forth. And we have also become very proficient in drafting the claims. We give them the draft claims only, and they will edit that and then build the whole story around it. So patenting has become like a normal activity as a part of this. And I also try to ensure that we don't release we do it so quickly that we don't release a product feature before patenting, because that's one of the needs. So I know all the do's and don'ts of patents thanks to my previous career. So we kind of incorporate all of it into that.
And it helps when, especially to your analogy of you're this child product and you have these three big blobs of doctors, mammography, and other results that you're actually competing with. The patents really help in that process. isn't
Absolutely.
it?
Another reason why patents are very important for Niramai is thermography has been around for quite some time. Like in 1984, one of the thermography devices got approved for an adjunct modality for breast cancer. So there are a few doctors who are using thermal imaging. However, they have made many mistakes. There are some people who have claimed more, because thermography is about taking these temperature maps and using visual analysis, guessing with eye, many cases. And the science aspect of it is not that profound right now. Though it works well, and there are successes, but there's no systematic study where it is proven that thermography will do better than mammography so far, right? And as soon as I start talking about thermal imaging and AI, people bracket me on that, that thermography which did not work. So it is important for us to show that it is not that old traditional thermography. This is thermalytics, which is renewed and which has become much, much more accurate because of AI. So what's new? See these 29 patents. Each of those patents are new things we have brought in, which did not exist before, and hence this is different. So it also helps us to articulate the difference between thermalytics and thermography, and make people believe that it is not the old stuff which did not work. So that's the other angle that is bringing, and of course it adds value to the company kind of overall valuation as well.
So one question here was, as part of my last stint as a seller at Microsoft, I've sold a lot of these video analytics capabilities. So a lot of your operational AI is pretty prevalent out there, whether it is in the airports or your retail stores, the heat map and all that stuff. But you're doing a little more niche analytics, which is the clinical systems analytics, which is a much more complex. It probably takes some bit of this operational AI, but it's not just this. It's a lot more complex than that, because you need to understand the science or the medical part of the variables that you're looking at, then identify, okay, here's the decision probability, and then the visualization as well. Can you help sort of understand or tear out this complexity that you had to deal with there?
Right.
Geeta?
Sure. So any application of thermal imaging, let me start with thermal imaging, right? As you said, it has been used for COVID fever test. That's a recent application, or even things like building maintenance, surveillance for defense, and so on.
I've seen it, like for example in Tihar jail, they have got this heat map cameras where you can detect if someone's not
because
in
what
the
happens,
space.
the body temperature is much higher than the surrounding temperature, so you can easily make out a red thing moving. Human detection is a very common use case, but there you just need to find a higher temperature item, and that's moving or not moving, whatever, and then call out, and then somebody will come and see and figure out whether it's person or not. Now, what we are looking at, as you mentioned also, is the medical application of thermal imaging. In fact, recently we actually conducted the first ever workshop on thermal imaging for medical applications. We held it in Singapore. We are the organizers. Niramai is the sponsor and organizers. We partnered with American Academy of Thermology to get the expert from there, as well as medical imaging expert, Dr. Alex as well. So we conducted that. That means so far it has never been seriously looked at as a medical image, like X-ray is considered as a medical image, or things like that, right? So that was one big thing. So we have to work on it. I'm not saying that we've completed that journey, but it's a mindset change we are working on. But the way we are positioning this is an end-to-end solution where everything is sort of put in, and now we compare thermalytics as a test with mammography as a test, right? You can consider them as black boxes and compare, because the end utility being the main. So that is how we are approaching it. Now, going a little bit like a double click on the technical front, what is the difficulty? Let's say you're doing AI for operational excellence. This is irrespective of thermal. It's for all healthcare clinical decision support systems, right? Versus an operational, improvement optimization technique. You're trying to reduce the waiting time of a patient. Let's say even in healthcare, right? At a particular diagnostic center. The impact of an error is that Saujanya will wait 5 more minutes before you get your imaging. Yeah. That's all. It's okay. I mean, of course, your 5 minutes is important, but think about it here. An error, the cost of an error.
Saujanya is like cuckoo after that, right? Like if it's a wrong decision that's come out, my life is like, oh my God.
You have called a person who is not cancerous as cancer, or a person who is having cancer as non-cancerous. That's the error we are talking about. It's the real impact. And also, it's like walking on a thin rope. You can't say, okay, if in doubt, I'll call them cancer. No, because if you start calling too many people as yes, then
it's false positive.
False positive is like the wolf thing. People will stop believing your thing, one. Or they get psyched and then they may go into psychological disorder, which actually can cause other kind of abnormalities, just because you told a wrong answer. Yeah. So this having the accuracy, and I probably coming back to this, where AI being used in real life with that high accuracy, touchwood, is something that Nirama has really marveled so far, right? And that's why it really took data scientists and researchers like all of us, right, to actually look at where is the problem, and very openly, not just to publish. Just to publish, you can always, I've seen researchers doing different ways of showing higher results, right? But here it's not like that. You're risking a life, and you didn't start the company to risk a life or make money, right? So that having really the machine work at highest accuracy point, having minimal number of false positives, hopefully 0 false negatives, not missing any cancer, has been our main, challenge and main direction where we are going. I think, so that becomes, again, for medical application, the main thing is the impact of error, right? That is true for all clinical decision support. And still we do have a person in the middle, like the expert. It'll be a tool to the doctor, and doctor makes the final decision. Doctor has very little space to actually change the decision, to be frank, but he or she can use this as a aid. But we've gone one step further. We actually do this in an autonomous AI mode when we go to rural areas and so on. It is automatically generating a red, yellow, green, and we bring people who are red or yellow to do a follow-up diagnostic. It has helped so many women, actually.
I think I would love to do another session on the decision-making algorithm itself, because that whole process is pretty complex. You're not talking about 1 or 2 variables here, right? Geeta, you're talking about, if I remember correctly, around 400,000 data sets that you're taking from the heat view. And then, it's different variables and how they impact. And that's how the decision of, why in the end it comes as red, yellow, green, and in its pick of time. That's the algorithm and the processing. It's pretty complex, right?
Yes. 400,000 temperature points. We extract different types of semantic features out of it. Because, see, the other thing is just you give red, yellow, green, it is not sufficient. The doctor will say, why are you saying red, yellow? What do you mean? I'm not finding it. So there's this new area that has come up, and it's explainable AI, right? You need to explain why the AI is saying what it's saying, right? And so for that reason, again, we were coming in from not the mentality of let me do explainable AI. That's what I used to do in my research career. Here we're coming in, I show this report to Dr. Sudhakar, say, sir, this said red. But I don't know what to do with this. I know you said, so I have to repeat all the tests, but what if I don't? So why are you saying this? You please tell me why you say red, then I'll believe you. So then I realized, doctors need explanation. And that's when we started working on how do we provide more explanation. So we are now able to provide, it's because of vascular variation, it is because of milk duct issues, it is because of inflammation, neoplasm, they say. So these are some of the things that we are seeing as signals, and that's why we are saying.
I think one thing I've also felt through this process, and as sort of looking at some of your interviews to understand the business model. So you have a B2C, you have a B2B. All of this is only possible when you've got the right partnership, and a big part of your partnership is the medical community. I have doctors at home. There are two sides that they sort of drift around. One is very pro, and those guys who are pro are like, they are building robotics to actually help in neurosurgery and all that stuff. The other is like completely dismissive about the ability of AI. I'm thinking in your case, when you're going to the field, you've seen both types. That would have been a huge, because without them coming on board, there's only so much you can do, whether it's B2B
Absolutely,
or B2C,
absolutely.
right? So that would have been another of those large assumptions that you had to sort of maneuver
Yeah.
through.
Yeah.
It's almost like an endurance run there.
Yeah, also because in the first few weeks you only meet those forward-thinking doctors, because they are the ones who are approaching you and listening to you. You assume everybody is like this, so good. They are like, of course they're willing to cooperate. Their partnership is very, very important. All of that. But yeah, when you start scaling, you realize there's huge skepticism on multiple things. One is, I'm not a medical doctor, though I have a PhD and all of that. So how can a non-medical person come in and tell me how to detect cancer, right? So that was one thought process. And second is, I've never read about this thermal imaging in my whole, whatever number of years of career, or so many years of education. And so why will it work? It will not work, right? And third, it's not in the policy. What if somebody sues me because I'm doing something that the guideline doesn't say? And several other things. Mammography is standard, and I have to do that only, and so on and so forth, right? So most people start with this, right? Of course, there are definitely the other side where they really realize the non-radiation based screening is absolutely important for breast cancer or any cancer, and so they want to partner with us to do it. So initially we go with people who are more open to partnerships, because we are in an evaluation mode, right? Because we also want to test out whether it's working. So once that is done, that is where I also realized the importance of clinical research, importance of publishing that in top journals. Again, the researcher piece came in, and then publication becomes very, very important. It becomes important because now your data and the results are being reviewed by top experts around the world. And I also made it a point that we will publish only in international journals, which are top tier, so that you have to increase the believability, the trust in the system. Yeah. So whatever it takes for that, right? So that way. So more recently, right, in the first few, we were just working with people who are open. Later, we just put in front of all of these skeptics the list of publications. Now our publication list is like 26, 28 or something, right? These are international venues, and which are really, really top venues like ASCO, American Society of Clinical Oncology, San Antonio Breast Cancer Conference, and and so on, right? Like BMJ Open. All of these are really, really top PubMed indexed journals. So that's where we kind of publish, and IEEE, Elsevier from a tech standpoint also. And now doctors start listening. Can you give me the full paper? I will read. And there are really, actually, they also obviously are there to serve the community. They are also meaning good. They just want to be sure that they are not recommending a non-working thing. So what initially I used to get little, oh my God, it's hard. But then I started putting myself in their shoe, right? Saying, obviously they're taking a risk, they're recommending, and they want to be sure. So if you come from that viewpoint and you give them all the data points that you have, and then be very transparent about where it will not work. For example, if a person has continuous nipple discharge, we give a Biret 0, means like, continuously last 1 week you're doing, why don't you go? Because sometimes thermal dissipation happens. So we'll be very clear about the gaps, which works and where are the gaps, if at all. And then they're open. Of course, there are so many doctors who have taken the trouble of reading our papers fully, right? Coming back and asking very, very deep questions, because not everything will be written up. Many of the clinical sessions, literally, I have to be there for many of the sales to complete. I mean, we are still in that stage. That means we have to publish more about the questions that they commonly ask. That's what the takeaway is. But with the, people are willing to listen. They are willing to work with us once they're convinced that this actually works. And finally, they'll say, okay, these papers are fine. You try it on my patients. I'll give you 1 week, one week you do me free things, and so evaluation. So we've done that also. So now we are adopted by very reputed hospitals. The first, of course, is the Apollo Diagnostic Clinics. BMS Hospital was our first reference customer. Then we have HCG who's using it, which is the cancer specialist. We have Medanta, Max Hospital also, we worked with them. Many of these in a Health Spring in Mumbai. So we are now in 29 cities. Yes, it is a B2B2C because, people, of course, cancer care is a clinical decision. So we work with them and they provide the service. And but we also have a non-clinical segment. The non-clinical segment is needed because we have to spread more and more awareness. There is a lot of hesitation in women coming to a cancer hospital for a regular screening because they have this social stigma, like what if somebody sees that I'm going to HCG every week, every month and every year or whatever, right? That kind of thing. So we have to bring the test closer to the person, increase the accessibility of it. So that's why we go for outreach programs. It could be rural camps, it could be corporate camps, it could be camps in the apartments and so on. So these are like, we are just talking to people like, you and I, like corporate guys, so explain to them what is the benefit. Here is a doctor who is sort of authenticating it. And most importantly, all reports for corporate and all of these hospital settings will be signed by a radiologist also, who can understand our report, and if they think there is a specific guidance they have to give, they will do. Our system also automatically generates that guidance, but the doctor reviews and gives it. This is in the full diagnostic setup. So that way they get confidence. A radiologist is looking at the report, so that's fine, and they're able to just do this in a conference room like this, where they just
it's like a blood test that they
15 minutes of your time, you go in your own office, instead of drinking coffee, go do the test and come. So it's very simple. Doing it together is very easy because everybody is doing it. I'm also doing it. So it's like normal. So you have to make it look more normal to do the breast cancer screening.
To normalize.
Feel it like common thing. So better do it. It's not like you're unique and you have cancer, that's why you're going. No, everyone does it, you please do it. So that's how we're bringing. So we have both the B2B2C, which is this. Even here, it is B2B2C. We work with corporate to take it to their end users. But the B2C is the home screening. We had to launch during COVID, where it was very, very tough. In April 2020, we had 2 people the whole month who screened in all our cities. It was like the major, because all hospitals said, don't come to the hospital for non-COVID reasons, and they stopped coming. We could not conduct outreach programs because of social distancing norms. We could not get more than 3-4 people in a camp together initially. Then later we explained that this is a non-touch. We had a separate protocol for COVID also, because nobody touches or sees the person. There is more than 6 feet between the technician and her. So we could slowly start the camps, but we launched this home screening. Because just because COVID is there, cancer is not going to stop. We really helped so many women. In the first 3 months of launch, we found 3 cancers at home with just a small team of people doing the screening. And they were able to get to the, as a special case, go for an MRI and understand their difficulties, and they were able to get treated also. So it was useful, important. So that is a segment which is B2C, but even there we are going with partners who are home care providers. So mostly it is B2B2C. Yeah.
Good. And Geeta, in this process, what I'm also seeing is how you started gradually first with the value proposition then identifying the target sector. And that's where you were mentally clear, this is for all women, period. It's not like the rich women. It's not like only
Yeah.
Indian women, or it's not like only tier one city women. It's all women. And I think that then gives you clarity on, okay, if that is the case, then who do I partner with? What distributions?
Absolutely.
What channels do I use? It also gives you perspective on the revenue and the cost aspect, and where do you have to maintain this
Absolutely.
balance,
And
right?
also there is a differentiated pricing, right? For example, if you want to do this all like, rural women, obviously it's a sponsored program mostly, they don't pay. And so you have to increase the sort of impact of the sponsorship in terms of the number of women screened. Whereas in a hospital setting, you're providing this test almost many times instead of mammography, so you have to sort of have a more detailed report, diagnostics and so on. So we have a differentiated reporting and differentiated pricing. Having said that, a person, if she's called as positive in this report, she will be positive in the other also. There's no differentiation in terms of the accuracy of the result, but amount of information that is given to the patient is different. In a village, in a rural setting where it's a triage, it's less than 100 rupees per person. We just give a red, yellow, green. Whereas here it could be a 3-page report with images, marking and all. The reason is that anyway the triaged patient will come to a hospital for a more detailed workup. So that's how we do the differentiation and the pricing. Even between countries, now we are international. We are operational in Kenya. Now we launched in Dubai as well. We have a 3 doctors using in US. Starting to get partners in Europe also. We've done more than 500 screenings in Europe so far, evaluation mode so far. And so with all this, there is differentiated pricing, just like there's a change in the, what do you call, cost of living, right? In the same way, this also is reflected. So it's really about, serving the needy with the revenue that comes from people who can pay, which is the norm. I think many businesses, social entrepreneurship, is all about that, right? So that is something we're doing. And again, I want to relate to, it's nice we're talking about corporate, relate to HP and Xerox mindset about being a global citizen, literally, right? We've traveled so much. My daughter keeps counting how many times I went to US. I think it's cost like 30, 40 times right now. And in some 20 odd countries, you travel a lot during being in a multinational publishing and, talking to customers around the world. So with that, you're not scared of going out of India.
Yeah.
So that's something I didn't realize, but it's like very natural for me to say, yes, of course, people in US will use, but there are several startups, so obviously have an India-focused look at it. But, it's very natural for me that it has to be global.
Yeah.
Interesting.
No, I think that's a beautiful. I always go back to see. So for me, as a creator now, outside of the corporate world, I can see how, what were certain mindsets that were so fixed there and how it's changed, as well as how that is
Can help.
really helping me
Yeah.
now. To your point of the confidence that comes, it's
Yes,
not just
exactly.
like that. It's that years
Something
of
you've done it,
doing
right? You've
that-
done it
yeah.
and you've learned it hard way. So,
Yeah.
I think we'll figure out.
So, what's the best call for action at this point? Because most of my audience are primarily the mid-career and also in the leadership roles in most companies and organizations, and it's not limited to IT. What's the best call for action for someone who's listening? What would Niramai want from them?
Sure. I would like to do 2 sets of call for action. One, this is October month. It's a breast cancer awareness month around the world. I want to tell everyone, please take care of your breast health. All women and all males, please tell your family members to take care of their health. Because women generally try to deprioritize their health versus family
The
members'
caregivers.
health, right? The caregiver aspect of it. And this here is a disease which can kill so many women, and all you need to do is regular screening, and people can live 30, 40 years after a surgery. So please take care of your breast health. It's not just like a sexual symbol or whatever. It's actually an organ which requires to be taken care of. Otherwise, it's going to take off your life. It's very, very important. And for that, you need to do two things. One, regular screening, annual screening with any of the tests, of course, whatever is suitable, preferably Niramai because it's radiation free, it's able to detect any abnormality early. Second, every month doing a self-test examination, right? There's you can Google, you'll find Niramai also has released several videos on how to do self-test examination just using hand. Every month, fix a date and do the self-test examination. Because by chance, if there are some symptoms that you see, that is feeling a lump or some kind of a discharge, or any change in the skin texture. These are like common three main things that you need to look for. And then if any of these, just go to the gynec or any physician immediately, right? So these two things, monthly check and annual test, would be very, very recommended for every person about 20 years or 25 years.
Oh, about 25.
20, 25. I mean, unless you have family cancer history, it has to be earlier. So this is something that, I would really want to call upon. And every lady and every person tell 5 more people, about this. That's one main thing. The second call for action, I guess, is more from an entrepreneurship perspective. And particularly women entrepreneurs are very, very few. I'm glad to see you jump as well.
Goosebumps, see? It is exciting and yet it's a little scary as well.
It's not many people have trodden that path, right? Of course, I never thought about any of this. I just wanted to solve the problem. I jumped off. Same thing, all of us have done it, right? You just have to forget the gender and jump off. But one thing, have the confidence. If you want to solve the problem, you have an intent to put your life behind it. I mean, it's hard. But don't lose the confidence, because we always see women have lower confidence in achieving something compared to their male, and even in our corporate careers we've always done double to get the same kind of an attention of a male colleague, and then later you set the trend and people start trusting your words. So the same way, right? Don't lose the confidence. Jump off. If you're passionate about solving it, things around you will help you succeed. That's what I want to say. Don't lose the confidence. It's one of the most wonderful journey, most fulfilling journey, and definitely you need support from the family. I mean, it will be wrong if I sit here for 1.5 hours and not thank my family, particularly my husband. He's like super supportive. I don't let him come anywhere near
I can relate to that.
But it's wonderful moral support and emotional support, and also physical activity support at home also, without which I surely wouldn't have been able to do. And my children also now given up. Any vacation would be only where mummy is having her customer discussion, if at all, things like that. So family support is very important. But don't, usually, family is supportive if your intent is clear, if you are transparent about what you're doing and so on. So for women entrepreneurs, I think this, is very, very important. Jump off, it's extremely fulfilling. You feel, okay, you're doing something useful, worthwhile in life, and so I think it's a good, challenging, interesting journey. All of us need to take it.
I think in your call for action is, for the first one, I would urge anybody who's in the HR, in the CSR space, to go reach out, start scheduling these, maybe even sponsor doing these tests, because a lot of companies adopt villages and schools, or probably because it's 25 plus, a set specific zone, and can we have more sponsorships around that? I think those are things, because the bigger mission is to really get to all the women. That's where we're going.
And women should not hesitate taking a test. Okay, there are two things that can happen. One, you are either detected with some early abnormality. It's good. You detected it early.
You start working.
Otherwise, after 3 years, right, or 4 years or 8 years, you would actually found a lump, and at that time it would be difficult. So with this fixing, you can go back to life within 6 months or maybe even earlier. Normal. If you don't find, be happy, right? Your peace of mind, just be. So both are good. Please do. Nothing. You just need to sit in front of this device for 10 minutes. That's it.
Geeta, last part, because we were maneuvering through a researcher mindset into entrepreneurship. I'm going to keep this ready for you.
No, I think I'm fine.
I think the question was around partnership, and I want to thread that a little bit because it's an important one. So I'll tell you why it's important. A while back, I started something called Bubble Trap. And I was going strong, and then there was partner came on board. We started running even more stronger, and then there was a difference in the way we were headed from an opinion point of view. It fell apart. Now, one part of it is it falling apart because there's a build of trust and relationship, and that's going to impact you. But the other part of it is you've taken a plunge on ambiguity, and suddenly when you lose this, it's almost like the floor underneath has been ripped off, and you almost hit ground zero from that confidence that we just spoke about. You might be a great researcher, you might be doing really running faster in entrepreneurship, but it's like something's pulled off. That's like a massive thing for one to go through. So I want to talk about understanding the role of partnership as you see, and how does one maneuver through it.
Yeah.
Are there some guidelines for someone who's like, for me, for example, are there guidelines on how do you go about, so you cushion yourself and at the same time build this relationship, and in case there comes a point where one of them has to part ways, it's still not like hitting ground zero. Too many things I asked you there, but then I think it's a very loaded question there.
Right. Yeah, I have never spoken about this outside.
Are you comfortable?
Yeah. No, it's okay. Basically, yes, we were colleagues. Nidhi and I were colleagues for a long time, right? Of course, we worked together at HP, and I pulled her into Xerox. I really love her passion and so on. Right?
You pulled her into Xerox. She was like with me working with Ajay, and then she said, "मैं जा रही हूँ, मैं Xerox जा रही हूँ." Yeah.
Literally, I just called because we had to start a pilot for some other project, and I thought, going on the ground, and she had worked with me on, Site on Mobile, which was an earlier thing. So I remembered it'll be like that. So I called her and said, "You're doing interesting stuff, or are you going to come?" So she came in, and I explained multiple things, projects as well. So she was in the other project and so on. So it's been a good friendship, and we both are like, very passionate about what we are doing.
Yeah.
So we are also both opinionated.
Yeah.
So it was fun to have like two opinions coming in together and all those things. Yeah, I think it was fine. It's just, I think there were several things. Initially, she was taking care of the product, and later, of course, it was getting more techy, and so there was a more tech team which was taking care of it. And she was supposed to do the sales and sort of thing. But then every time, I guess she went to a doctor, they were like, such a deep tech and clinical question, I had to come in. So there was some thing, right? Like independently, So, and immediately I think there is a lot of this sort of, I guess it's more insecurity that gets built up, right? And you will start doing different things, which the other person may not approve of, some approaches, because, it's so the differences come in. I will not be able to share all the details of it. So it's really about the way you would like to move forward, For me, being straight, truthful, integral is very, very critical. So that's one aspect of it, because we are taking on a big journey of saving lives, and so it has to be a straightforward discussion everywhere. Anyway, so after 2 years, I think she got tired of me and decided to quit. And but the problem is, one is you build the thing together, start up together, almost like marriage. It's like marriage.
Yeah.
So during this phase when it's not working together, there's a lot of hitch. So that is emotionally affecting. When a person really quits for a very simple, silly reason, right? It like, okay, you suddenly feel that somebody you have trusted just ditched you, right? So that was one thing. And then investors also start thinking negative about the person who is staying back, which was much harder for me to, maneuver.
Yeah.
Because I had to really regain the trust from
Yeah.
them.
Yeah, because it's hard because
It's not really about the work,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
obviously
You
I was
pick
in
up.
front of the hospital talking.
Yeah.
That's nothing actually.
Yeah.
It's more the emotional
Yeah.
aspect of being ditched,
Yeah.
and the environment around you is negative.
Yeah. Especially because you're running at a pace.
Yeah, and the
In a
pace gets
space like
affected.
this, yes.
The team gets affected, and you have to bring them all together. And mainly taking care of the investors was the hardest part of it.
Because you would, I invest in startups, and I think the first thing you look at is the founder group and the team, and and after 2
It's
years.
like I have done something to throw her out. I mean, boss, I'm sticking on here.
Yeah.
Come on, I'm willing to go a long way.
Yeah.
Just keep the trust in me. It doesn't happen that way, right? So everything you say, it'll be looked at as different. So it took some time. I think truth will prevail. That's all I can say.
Would you advise partnership for someone starting?
I think partnership is very important. Definitely important because you can share your load. It's a lot
Yeah.
of load, and there are certain things you cannot discuss with all the employees.
Yeah.
So it's always good to have a founder,
Yeah.
co-founder. I guess we need to have some kind of boundaries set, and make sure you can be transparent about what's going well, what's not going. It's very important to have founders who are more open to comments.
Yeah.
If everyone is egoistic, this is not about me.
Yeah.
It is not about ego. It's not about it's about the company. That's all. So you have to really put the company before your own growth or your own stuff. Definitely. That's the kind of partner you have to find.
Makes sense.
If it becomes I,
Yeah.
that's where you can't compromise a company's benefit for a single person's.
It's the
That's
purpose.
I didn't even realize somebody else had to come in and said, I think this is not working. Literally somebody else had, because I'm more of an adjusting type person. So anyway,
It's like a marriage. isn't it?
I'm thankful that we've been able to get the support of the investors. We could sail through the COVID, and I have a wonderful team now to compensate and work with us. We recently reached 100, including the technicians, 100
Oh, wow.
members now. So this month, so I'm very, very happy with the team, and the way they all support is like amazing. It's like a family.
Yeah, no, I think as you're setting, and I keep talking about it, when you're setting up your company, in large organizations, you have HR, marketing, and other teams taking care of some of these.
Everything.
Here, everything is yours, right? Like, oh, how does one deal with this situation now? And so you're sort of setting culture, everything, right? It's not just your individual brand, but also your organization's brand. And that's like huge because it's not just your life,
Yeah.
you're also talking about the adjacent lives, like everybody working in the company.
Yeah.
So it's a big deal there. Geeta, one last question, which is researcher to entrepreneur today. If you look back at the Geeta who was a researcher who started at ISC to today, how have you changed?
Oh my God. I started my ISC as a shy, very, very shy girl who was not speaking loudly, not speaking to any boy.
I can relate.
Hey, please ask him now. And but ISC gave me a huge courage to ask questions, and so I have seen people asking questions, and so then I realized that's a very important way of expressing and learning more knowledge. So I think ISC was a huge transformation for me as a person. from a girl to a researcher, not worried about gender. That was very, very important, and bringing the confidence. After that, I have, and I think my marriage with my husband was super. He's super outgoing. He'll talk to anybody. He goes to a hotel, he'll first chat with the gatekeeper. Said, why are you talking? So he's such a humane person. So that gave me that outward kind of, it's okay, everyone is human, I can just talk type of thing. I think these two combination, and now plunged into entrepreneurship, I can now go into any country, any hospital, any doctor, go and blurt out about Niramai. Without knowing, all I need to do is Google the name and I'll go and do it. So it's a huge transformation. And hustling is very, very important. You need to make friends. And because all of this is, I always remember, for the benefit of the world, right? Then you just remove all your hesitations, ego to matlab fully squashed. How many times I get scolded and said, chalo, okay, sorry, done. I can't do anything about it. I'm doing my best, I know.
Yeah.
That's it. That's what matters, right? At the end of the day. So yeah, so it's a new person, and but most importantly, I feel there's somebody who's making me do all this, so it gives me more courage.
Yeah. And also content.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. What does attitude makeover mean to you?
Attitude makeover. Yeah. Oh. Oh, you should have told me this. I didn't think through this. Sorry. Okay. I think attitude makeover is remove attitude.
Take off.
I think it's really about a world where everybody has their own space, and remove that judgmental aspect from things like that, and then judgment about yourself. Just be 100% in whatever you're doing. Just take things as it comes and do your best.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
So why think about any specific aspect of anybody else's attitude or my own kind of attitude? That's what I feel now.
I love
just
it.
being free and open is what is.
I love it. Geeta, thank you so much. I think it's been a lovely conversation. I hope you also had.
Oh yeah, it was such a long discussion. I didn't even realize that. And you made me cry a couple of times. I'm so sorry.
That is not at all my intent. I'm so sorry. Thank you so much. It's a holiday and you've come here. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Sonia.
And
It was
I
a
hope
pleasure
you-
talking to you, and all the best for your blogs to pick up really, really well.
Thank you.
Podcasts.
I hope more and more women benefit from this. I think we should have some competition sort of thing for how many people. Is there something I can do like that where register?
Yeah, we can give you a link.
Yeah, I think we should do that. I
Definitely
think
do
we
that.
should do that. We'll
Sure.
do that.
Definitely.
But thank you so much.
Thanks, Sonia.
Thank you.
Thank you all.